Please welcome a Razorback legend, Dave Jorn.
As you can see, I can move faster than I used to go to the mound, right? Seems like that's all I ever hear about when I run into somebody. They go, "Oh yeah, I remember you. You're the guy that used to walk so slow to the mound." And so I'm like, I have to educate y'all why that is or was. Number one, I'm not a big fan of going to the mound. I'm a little bit disappointed that my players can't figure out how to make the adjustments that they need to do to get back in form to be able to execute pitches. So as I'm going out to the mound, I'm giving them an opportunity to kind of regroup, but I'm also giving myself an opportunity to regroup because I'm not real happy. Number two, I've got bad ankles. I mean, when I'm standing around in that dugout, my body's getting stiff, my ankles are stiff, and they're like creaking every time I walk out there. So I have to do what? Go slow to the mound. Anyway, I thought you might enjoy that. But I'm really happy that you invited me here to speak to y'all today. And Christina and I are going to do a little Q&A. And I'm not sure what she's got in mind, but I don't want to overlap anything that she has for questions to ask me. So why don't you just come on up and we'll get started.
So Coach, I want to start with your first stint at Arkansas in the 1980s. We have Coach O'Brien here. Thank you for being here, Coach. What are your best memories of working under Norm O'Brien?
Well, I don't know if you all know this, but that's Mr. Goodwrench over there. I nicknamed that Norm years ago because Norm has got a heart of gold. And if anybody needs anything done, they go to Norm, and he'll take care of it. He can't say no, that's just how big his heart is. But that guy right there, if you talk about a GOAT, the greatest of all time, there he is right there. When I first got to Arkansas, there was only one full-time assistant, and that was Doug Clark. and when I came there, I was getting paid $400 a month, and they were paying, the university was paying for my master's. Well, I'm starving to death. So Norm just had me come over to his house all the time to eat dinner and do whatever. I was like part of the family. So, I mean, there's not a greater person that I know than Norm O'Brien.
So then you come back to Arkansas in the 2000s with Dave Van Horn. And with Coach Van Horn, what do you remember about those earlier days of his time at Arkansas? And do you see any differences in him now or his approach?
Well, I was scouting at the time, and Dave was coaching at Nebraska, and Nebraska was one of my states in my territory, and so we kind of renewed our relationship. We kind of lost contact over the years, but back in the 80s, when Dave was a grad assistant there and I was the pitching coach, we were kind of running buddies, and I was in his wedding in 1987, and when he got the job, I called him to congratulate him, and he says, "Hey, by the way, have you had enough of that pro ball stuff yet?" And I said, "Yeah, as a matter of fact, I have." So that's kind of how I came back in the summer of 2002. But, Dave is, my nickname for him is Rooster. He's like a little rooster, man. He's going to be, if you're talking about, he's not going to go to the mountain slow. He's going quick. I mean, he is moving now. And, he's wiry, he's competitive, and what can I say? He's done a great job.
Absolutely. And then as far as this year's team, you mentioned a little bit of scouting. So have you scouted at all this year's team?
I saw him 3 times in the preseason before the season started. I went down and on a Friday, three consecutive Fridays, because I wanted to see Hagen, Schmidt, and just get a view of the team, because I didn't see him in the fall at all. And usually I'll go down there in the fall, but I had some bad physical problems this past year. I mean, I wound up getting surgery. I had what kind of surgery did I have, Melinda? I'm having a senior moment. Somebody said they were having a Bella Vista moment a while ago. I think that's what I'm having. No, I had hernia surgery. It was like a double hernia surgery, and that just put me out for all fall. But anyway, I saw them 3 consecutive Fridays, and then I was there this last weekend against Missouri, and it's well deserved what they got. I mean, they got some really good pitching.
And I wanted to ask you about Hagen because a lot of us, have seen the crazy numbers he's been putting up. But from a scout perspective, what is it that makes him stand out to some of these pro scouts?
Well, I mean, what you can see is, obviously the physical part. I mean, the kid's got a great arm. He's got a wipeout slider that left-handers have no chance against, and he's come up with a split finger changeup. So he's got the quality of pitches that are major league, better than major league average. So, and this kid is, I mean, y'all don't probably get a chance to see that, but I've gotten to know him a little bit, and his makeup is good, if not better, than his physical ability.
I wanted to talk about Mason Molina and Brady Taggart as well, because those are their other two weekend starters who have had tremendous outings, but Hagen has been getting a lot of the attention for his Friday days. So with the other two weekend starters, what do you see from them and what do you like about them?
Well, I mean, Hagen Smith is Superman, and these two guys are just human. So I can't figure out Molina yet because I'm sitting behind home plate and I'm watching that 90-91 fastball come in there straight as a string, and all the Missouri hitters missing it. And I'm like, it's like a disappearing fastball. I mean, it's not overpowering and it's straight, but for some reason, guys aren't hitting it. And like I said earlier, before the season started, I saw him pitch against Hagen on those Fridays in inter squad games, and he got lit up in those games. But now he's dealing. So, and then Brady, I mean, good curveball. He's throwing a lot more strikes than he has in the past, and they got three quality starters right there.
Going back to Hagen, we've seen him kind of climb the career strikeout leaderboard over the course of this season, and he's maybe able to catch Nick Schmidt, who you coach. Just what do you remember about Nick and about that, those seasons when he was racking up all those strikeouts?
Well, Nick is really special to Melinda and myself. I mean, my wife actually helped to lead him to Christ in 2007. He was going through some really tough times, and she mentored and talked to him, and we stood up for him in their wedding. And Nick was the ultimate competitor. I don't know if you all remember, but I'm a pro ball guy. I like to pitch off the fastball, and I like to call it it's playing hardball. And if you take a big swing off of me, guess what's coming? It's coming up under your chin somewhere. Don't take a big swing off me when you're in the batter's box, and don't get comfortable in the batter's box because we're going to keep you loose. And Nick loved to do that. And that was a big part of his success. He was ornery out there. I mean, I remember a couple times him kind of, like Mississippi State, I think one time third base coach popped off to him, and I thought he was going to go tear him up. So just a tremendous competitor with great stuff.
So going back to your career, after you left Arkansas, you actually spent some time, I think you said about 9 months in Korea coaching there. So how did that actually come about?
Well, when I retired in 2016, I never really planned on getting out of baseball. My plan was to go back into pro ball, to go to the rookie levels where these guys are, right now spring training is getting ready to wrap up, and these guys are going to full season teams, and the rest of the guys that don't make a full season team are going to be left behind in what's called extended spring training. And they play games at like 10 o'clock in the morning. They're out there working at 8 o'clock in the morning. They're getting up early. There's no motivation. Excuse me. There's nobody that goes to the games. It's complex baseball. It's it's tough. And I just wanted to go there and just, these are 17, 18-year-old kids, and just try to mentor to them and try to help them understand what life was about, and, help them to develop their game and that type of thing. And I couldn't get a job. It was almost like nobody wanted to hire the old guy. They were hiring all these young guys that had just finished their playing careers in the minor leagues. And so I knew a ton of people too in pro baseball, and I reached out, sent texts, resumes, all kinds of stuff to maybe 100 people. And one of the guys that I reached out to was a former coach that I had coached with the Yankees, and he called me in like October and asked me if I had gotten a job yet. And I said, no, I haven't. And he says, well, I'd like for you to be my pitching coach. He says, I'm going international and I'd like for you to come with me. And we were on, I had the phone turned up, Melinda was listening to it, and I said, well, what do you think of this? He said, well, I said, where are you going? He says, I'm going to Korea. And she said, that sounds like fun. So that's what we did. We went to South Korea with Trey Hillman. Now, some of you guys might remember Trey Hillman as being the manager of the Kansas City Royals for a couple of years, but we worked together in the minor leagues with the Yankees.
So what is different about baseball in Korea versus here at the pro level?
Well, that was their major league. That's what they call their major leagues over there, and they have 10 teams. And they're home run hitters. They're big. They're strong. They have a really good offense, but they're really pitching poor in their country. And I would compare it probably to AAA type baseball over here.
Okay, so then as a pitching coach, what was that like dealing with something with, like you said, a pitching poor kind of league?
It was fun. I mean, each team is allowed to have 3 imports, 3 non people from the country, and they always take one guy that can hit home runs, and they take 2 starting pitchers. And so those guys were great. In fact, one of my pitchers is Merrill Kelly, who is one of the starters for the Arizona Diamondbacks. And the hardest thing was the communication. I had an interpreter, but I wasn't quite sure of how he was interpreting my message. And it took a little while for us to trust each other and this and that. But I mean, I loved it over there. It was great. The culture is great. It's very respectful. It's very new, very modern. It was a good time. I mean, I really enjoyed it.
And then not long ago, you wrote a book, which Chip mentioned, More Than Baseball. What was the challenge of writing a book?
Well, I never really thought that I had anything important to say. I was just having breakfast with a friend of mine, Ron Harris, one morning at First Watch in Fayetteville, and I was just telling him a little bit about how I grew up and some of the things that I've experienced in my life, and he suggested writing a book. So that's kind of how that started. And really what the book is pretty much all about. It's how I grew up, like 50 years of my life without knowing Jesus Christ. And then in 2004, accepting him as my Lord and Savior. And so we're using this book as a platform to try to reach people that don't know Christ. And it was not a hard thing to do. Really, what I did is I got with an editor type of situation where we just called into an 800 number, and we just talked into it, and then they transcribed it onto paper. I edited it, and we just kept doing that over and over until we finally had it finished. So
going back to your Arkansas career, I saw in an interview from, I believe, about a year or two ago that Coach O'Brien said that he had seen some kind of change in you from your first stint in Arkansas in the 80s to when you came back. What do you think that he meant by that, and was there that kind of change?
Well, there was definitely that kind of change. He was able to see, I was a lot happier. I mean, I was walking with the Lord. I was free. I had freedom in my life finally, and it wasn't all about me anymore. It was about everybody else, and I think that was pretty obvious that he was able to recognize that.
Well, that's all of the questions I have for you, but I want to give it back to you since you let me get my questions in first. So if there's anything else that you wanted to talk about or tell our crowd here.
Well, I don't want to offend anybody with religion or anything like that, but I mean, this is where I'm at in my life right now. We just started a 501c3, Melinda, my wife and I. In fact, that's her right there. So why don't you just stand up and say hi to everybody? Because that's the second best thing. That's the second best thing that's happened to me in my life. Of course, number one was accepting Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. But we started a 501c3, and we're trying to generate money through book sales, speeches, talks, whatever. However we can generate any kind of money in order to be able to bless people that need help. And so right now, what I'm doing in my scouting, and I thought about doing this last year but never moved on it, but this year I've been, wherever I go, and I'm usually out on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and so wherever I go on those weekends, I try to I do meet with the head coach of whatever team is the visitors. like this last weekend, Missouri was a visitor, so I go to the Missouri coach and I asked him, I said, hey, I know you're on the road and I know your kids have no access to go to church or any of that type of thing. Would you mind if I would give the kids a chapel service on Sunday morning? And he said yes, and we met at 9 o'clock at their hotel on Sunday morning, and my talk was on faith. But that's what I'm doing right now. I want to do whatever I can to glorify God and to help anybody that needs the help. And so every Sunday morning, I hope that wherever I'm at, I can visit with the visiting players. And I think Missouri had about 8 guys. The Sunday before that, I met with Missouri State. We had about a dozen. Where did our Evansville guy go?
He stepped out, I think.
He stepped out. Okay, well, I met with the University of
There he is.
I met with the University of Evansville players, and there was like 17 kids there on that Sunday for chapel. And so that's where I'm at right now. The Lord has blessed me. I don't know. I was never worthy of any of it, but He always blessed me. I mean, in my book, you can see, my journey in life, how the Lord has taken care of me my whole life, and I didn't deserve any of it, but I'm just trying to do whatever I can, be obedient, be available at this point in my life.
Thank you so much for being here, Coach. We
You
appreciate
bet.
it.
My pleasure. Thank you.